Welcome back, everyone, to episode 90 of the Guardian Project podcast. I'm your host, Andy. And Coyle, you know when you're browsing the internet on a Friday morning and you run into a WandaVision spoiler thread? Ooh. Well, that's what we call a sudden spoiling.
Ooh.
And it's got split second, so you can't even look away.
No, you have to absorb it then and there. Maybe mana abilities can respond to it, but that's about it. And I'm your other host, Mike Coyle. And Andy, I'm pretty sure you actually work with a pretty evil demon. You know Vince, broker of flood insurance?
Please listen carefully.
That's good. Broker of flood
insurance.
We would be the demons. The brokers.
The brokers, yeah.
And this is the podcast where we talk about all things Magic the Gathering.
But mostly Commander.
So we had some news that came out this past week. Probably the biggest item, at least for us, was the announcement of Magic's voyage to universes beyond. So this is going to be looking at new IPs to bring into the Magic world.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, at least for me. I know some people are a little wary about bringing in other IPs into the Magic universe, but Wizards of the Coast in this article really explains it well and how they're doing it.
Yeah, it says among these worlds are the expansive universes of Warhammer 40K and the Lord of the Rings, and they are not going to be standard legal. Now, I know I've mentioned before, I just don't know a ton about Lord of the Rings, I'll be honest. And I've never played Warhammer 40K, but I know you love both of these.
Yeah, I used to play Warhammer 40K, and actually before that, so Warhammer 40, if you don't know, it's a tabletop miniatures game. And actually, I started tabletop miniatures with a Lord of the Rings tabletop miniatures game because I was really into Lord of the Rings, still am.
How convenient.
I know. So I'm like a kid in a candy shop, getting to, bring in some of my other nerd kingdoms, whatever it is, into Magic the Gathering, especially since in this article it actually alludes to a Warhammer 40K Commander deck series, which is, that's my format, and there's 40K with it. It's super exciting for me, at least.
That's how much each of them costs.
40,000 cents. $400. That's still a lot.
40,000 cents for a precon?
I better have like every single deck's 5-color.
All the fun things.
Dual lands from reserve or from
Duels?
Revised.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The article says Universes Beyond came about thanks to a simple thought. If we can expand our story beyond the game system to things like comics, novels, and other games, then surely we can expand the game system to let players explore worlds outside the worlds of Magic. So similarly to the Secret Lair for The Walking Dead, these are going to have a different rarity stamp on them. Again, like we said, they won't be standard legal. The Warhammer 40K is going to be a set of commander decks, and from what we can see, it sounds like the Lord of the Rings is going to be a full set on its own.
Yeah, it's going to be like a supplementary set that we get kind of in between our standard sets. So
so that's some really big news. And I know Twitter was up in arms because of this, but I mean, in all honesty, when isn't Twitter up in arms? But I mean, I could go for some more IPs being added to Magic. I think honestly, the whole issue with The Walking Dead wasn't necessarily the fact that it was just a different IP. I think some people had some issue with some of the characters and what they portrayed, but and I mean, it hasn't broken anything. And to be honest, I haven't seen anybody play with those decks.
No, actually, I was in preparation for the episode today. I was watching some gameplay videos on YouTube, and I think, finally see a month ago. I think MTG Mudsta had a Glenn deck on his, so from the Walking Dead Secret Lair. But that's the first time I've seen it. But I mean, if you're worried about, or if you're concerned, maybe you don't want to play with these secondary IPs in Magic. Like Andy said, there is a different rarity foil stamping on these. So if you look out for that triangular foil stamping, you can see this already on the Walking Dead Secret Lair. If you want to rule zero and say no triangle foil stamps, that's all you got to say. And that's up to you and your play group. So
yeah, we're all for playing with whatever. I don't care what you play with us. And we're all for those proxies too. So if someone wants to play with a bunch of proxies, we're cool with that. Speaking of proxies, so Proxy Lab was on our stream just a couple of weeks ago, actually. And as a thank you, they sent us a set of proxies. We actually tweeted it out. So you may have seen it on Twitter or on Instagram. But we were sent some really awesome proxies of Queen Marchesa, Skithiryx, Gaia's Cradle, Gitaxian Probe, Sol Ring, and Selvala, Heart of the Wilds.
Yeah, so
this is the first time that I've ever had any version of Gaia's Cradle in my hand.
The same. And I don't have it in my hand yet. You have it at your house.
I have it at my house. But this is the first time I've ever had a Gaia's Cradle. These are so cool. And actually, everybody calls Skithiryx Skittles. It's just been a nickname that everybody calls it. And this one actually is called Skittles, the Blight Dragon. And it has a Skittles border with Skittles all over the card.
It's adorable. It really
and there's a
is.
rainbow behind it.
Yeah. I don't know if I have a deck that Skittles goes in, but I'm just going to shove it somewhere. Just take a swamp out of my mono black deck and shove a Skittles in there.
Yeah, for sure. So Proxy Lab, thank you so much for sending these to us, and check them out on Twitter. I believe it is at @lab_proxy. Lots of really cool stuff.
Yeah. We also had an opportunity over the past couple of weeks to, catch up with some of our Patreon rewards. We got a lot of our Patreon tokens out for, just a couple stragglers and all of our new patrons. So if you're a patron and you donated to the level where you would be getting a playset of tokens, if you haven't already received them, look out for them in the mail.
Yes, and if you have not put your address into Patreon yet, please do that. I see that there's a few folks that I don't have the address, so do that so we can send you some really cool tokens. Yeah. Speaking of tokens, though, Coyle, you got to play your new Abzan tokens deck this past week.
Yeah, I actually played it, I think, a total of like 3 times, once on stream and 2 times in some casual games, and it's so much fun. That deck is... really, really awesome. I don't have any tutors in it or anything, so it plays differently every single time I played it. Andy, you got to see the landfall sub theme go pretty crazy with the Scoot Swarm in our streamed game. So you got to see one facet of the deck. So hopefully I get to show you some of the other facets when I get to play it a little bit more.
Yeah. No, that was really cool. I'm still working on my Orvar deck. It's not done yet, but we got to see Orvar on stream. Chris Wolf played that, and that deck is really cool.
Yeah.
Really, really cool for being a mono blue deck. So if you want to support us and join our Patreon streams with our patrons, you can head to patreon.com/the Guardian Project, Guardian Project Pod, and donate for any dollar amount.
Yeah, and if you want to support the podcast in another way, wherever you're listening to the podcast on now, whether it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, if you could hit like, leave us a follow, hit the bell icon if you want to see or get notifications on when we release new content on our YouTube channel. We'd really appreciate that. Any comments you want to give us in order to improve the podcast to make it better for you. If you don't tell us that we need to improve it, we don't know that we need to improve it, so you got to tell us. So please do that, and we'd really appreciate your feedback.
Yeah, so Coyle, what are we talking about this week?
This week we actually have a patron deck tech. So, speaking of Patreon, one of our reward levels for Patreon support is being able to review one of your decks here as an entire episode of our show. So that is what we're going to be doing this week.
Who are we talking about? What deck?
We're talking about Dan Krause's Vilis Broker of Blood deck.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump into that. So Dan Krause submitted his Vilis Broker of Blood deck to be our deck tech for this week. And it is probably one of the most powerful mono black decks that I've ever played against, and I've played against your mono black decks.
It's true. I actually used to have a Vilis deck back in the day, and I was just talking to Andy right before this. I actually took it apart because it was a little too strong. Vilis is so strong. I mean, but he's 8 mana, so.
I mean, how bad could it be? It costs 8 mana. It's so expensive. It's not going to come out very quickly, right?
Maybe like turn 3 or 4 at the earliest.
Yeah, maybe turn 3 or 4, right? So Vilis, Broker of Blood is an 8/8 flying demon for 5 black that has pay 1 black and 2 life to give target creature -1/-1 until end of turn. And it says whenever you lose life, draw that many cards. It's so expensive and it's so mana intensive. It couldn't be that good, right?
It can't be any good. No.
It's so strong. It is so strong.
So just to start off, we're going to read. So when Dan sent us his deck list, his primer that he had was a little bit dated. And we're gonna talk about that a little bit. He mentions some cards in there that are no longer in the deck list, and I understand why. But just to go over like his first paragraph and exactly what this deck wants to do, he says that this deck is loaded with effects that sacrifice your own life for card draw and control the board. Once Vilis is out on the board, he turbocharges up all black card draw and also turns cards from an answer also into more card draw. All in all, there are over 30 card draw, in quotation, spells in this deck once Vilis is on the field. So it's really just taking advantage of all of these black cards with the, quote, negative side effect, unquote, of using your life as part of the cost of the spell. And we're going to take that to our advantage, and we're going to draw a bunch of cards because of it.
Yeah, I never used to use my life total as a resource. I mean, I used to be very, I'm at 30. And now, I'll go to town with a Bola Citadel. Oh, I'm at 10. I'll still cast this card for 4 from the top of my library. I love it.
For sure. I actually think there's a pretty interesting parallel that you started using your life total as a resource at the same time that we all started swinging with our 1/1 mana dorks when we don't have to use them for mana. It's like, you got to do 1. You got that. Life's a resource. You got to do that 1 when you can do that 1.
I always swing him for that random 1 and 2 damage. We used to not do that.
Right. It makes a difference.
Right. It does make a difference. So in this deck, there's a lot of ways to do similar effects. And so there's some really strong cards in mono black, and we feel like maybe you can use these cards or maybe even categorize them all together to give similar effect, right? So we've got cards like Yawgmoth's Bargain, Phyrexian Arena, and Greed. And so let's talk about these cards and cards that do similar effects in the deck.
Right. So Yawgmoth's Bargain, for a lot of people that don't know, is arguably one of the best black card draw spells in the game. I almost said Commander. It's banned in Commander. So the reason I wanted to bring it up is because Vilis actually turns a bunch of other cards into pseudo Yawgmoth's Bargain effects. So Yawgmoth's Bargain is a 6 CMC enchantment. So for 4 black, you get an enchantment permanent that says skip your draw step, pay 1 life, draw a card. So when we're looking at how do we replicate this effect in a Vilis deck, how do we replicate the effect of this banned 6 converted mana cost enchantment that was too good for Commander? How do we replicate that in a Vilis deck? It's anything where you can pay life repeatedly without having to tap or pay mana into the effect. And it doesn't really matter if you do anything when you pay that life, but at the same time, you just get extra added effects.
Right. So I'll start with my favorite of these, a card that I run in my Gerard Golgari Lichlord deck, which is Wall of Blood. It is a 0/2 wall for 2 and a black that says pay 1 life, Wall of Blood gets +1/+1 until end of turn. That's it. So you can pay your life, pump up this wall. You can use it as a blocker if you want. I mean, it's probably relevant. But if Vilis is out, every time you do this, you draw 1 card.
That's right.
Yes, please.
So you can, in theory, draw 39 cards and then see if you have the win in your hand or not. And then you also will have a 39-41 wall, in case you need it.
A 39-41 wall, and it specifically says walls can't attack.
That's right.
25-cent card from Mirrodin. Sign me up.
Why not? So actually, since you started with your favorite, I'm going to start with my favorite. And it's actually a card that was printed relatively recently. I guess it's almost 2 years ago now, though.
I can't even believe it.
So this is Doom Whisperer from the Guilds of Ravnica set from summer 2018, 2019, whatever it was. So for 3 black, you get a Nightmare Demon 6/6 with Flying and Trample that says pay 2 life, Surveil 2. So if you're not familiar with the Surveil keyword, it's like Scry, but instead of putting the card at the bottom of your library, you put it into your graveyard. So not only are you paying 2 life and drawing 2 cards when combined with Vilis here, but you're also looking at the next 2 cards in your library as well. So technically, if you pay 38 of your starting 40 life total, you can look at a total of 76 cards of your library. And then if you take into account the fact that you start the game with, 7 cards, unless you mulligan down, you really maybe are only looking at 10 cards left in your library after that. So I think Doom Whisperer with that extra surveil ability is probably one of the most powerful cards to make it through your deck in Vilis. Plus you're in mono black, and the surveil putting cards in your graveyard can probably take advantage of it.
Absolutely. The next card here is Unspeakable Symbol. It is an enchantment for 1 black that says pay 3 life, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So you're gonna put a counter on a creature and draw 3 cards. That's it. I love it.
That's right. And and your commander is already a flying 8/8, so why not just make your commander bigger?
100%.
All right, the last card that we have here that is emulating our Yawgmoth's Bargain is a card I've literally never heard of before looking through this list, and that is Soul Changeling. This is an enchant creature aura for 2 and a black that says pay 2 life, regenerate enchanted creature. And that's it.
So regenerate is if the next time this creature would be destroyed, it's just not destroyed. And I believe it also taps it and removes it from combat.
Yes.
But that's really great to throw on Vilis.
It's pseudo indestructible with the quote unquote downside of having to pay life. So you get to draw cards to make Vilis, again, now, not truly indestructible, but.
Not truly, but it does kind of affect it if you are trying to go with the Voltron strategy, which we will obviously get to later with swinging, because it does remove it from combat. Mm-hmm. But that's a really great card to give protection to your Vilis because it's the next time. So you can pay 2 life, and if someone tries to remove it, and then someone tries to remove it again, you can pay another 2 life.
Yeah, and even if, you can also just literally
destroy
use this as
a card. Not exile it.
Yeah, and you can literally just use this as a card draw outlet too. You don't necessarily have to have Vilis being killed in order to regenerate it. You can just regenerate it, 15 times at the end of the person's turn right before yours, draw 30 cards. So very, very cool draw outlet with Vilis. So those are the 4 staples in this deck that kind of emulate Yawgmoth's Bargain. Before we move on to the next emulation card, I did want to mention Blood Celebrant here. This card is not being used by Dan, and I think it's kind of a missed opportunity. And Dan, don't take offense to that. So Blood Celebrant is a 1 black creature cleric 1/1 that says pay a black and 1 life to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So this doesn't actually net you mana, but it is mana even. And then you can keep paying 1 life into it. So it's going to be just as relevant as your Wall of Blood here, except maybe if you do need the big blocker in order to just draw cards by paying 1 life.
Listen, having 5 options is better than 4.
That's true.
The next section is on the card Greed, which is a very popular card in a lot of commander decks. Greed is an enchantment for 3 and a black that says pay 1 black, pay 2 life, draw a card. So it could be a relatively high CMC card in a lot of decks being at 4, but seeing as we do have a good amount of ramp here, and it is in mono black that can usually produce a significant amount of mana, it becomes a really, really strong enchantment. So combined with Vilis, you get to draw 3 cards for 1 black mana because you're drawing a card off of Greed and you're paying 2 life into that ability, which draws you 2 off of Vilis.
That's right.
Really strong.
Yeah, of these 3 black staples that we talked about, Greed is actually the only one that we're both emulating and playing in this deck.
Yes, Greed is included.
That's right. So the other cards that we're going to be talking about here are going to have extra advantages in order to pay the mana into them rather than just drawing cards. So the next card that we're going to talk about here is Pestilence. So Pestilence is a 2 black enchantment that says, at the end of each turn, if no creatures are in play, sacrifice Pestilence. And at the beginning of your upkeep... Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, and then you could pay black, and Pestilence deals 1 damage to each creature and each player. So this 1 damage is going to hit yourself, and you're going to be able to draw a card from that from Vilis. The one kind of downside here is the damage will also hit Vilis, so you only be able to do it, 8 times until Vilis dies, unfortunately, unless it's indestructible somehow, or you can regenerate it or whatnot. So, but the added advantage of being able to clear out tokens, this deck doesn't really focus on creating 1/1 tokens or anything, so you don't have to worry about killing your own creatures, but you can, take out other people's token strategies. And the fact that you're dealing damage to your opponents as well. It's not just you losing life, but your opponent's losing the same amount of life, keeping you on an even playing field, but you're the one drawing cards and not them.
Exactly. The next card here is Arabos God of the Dead. For 3 and a black, you get a 5/7 legendary enchantment creature god with indestructible. That says, as long as your devotion to black is less than 5, Arabos isn't a creature. It also has your opponents cannot gain life, which is
huge.
It's very important in Commander. As much as life gain strategies get I guess pushed to the side or maybe not thought of as a high power strategy, the amount of times that me just gaining 10 life has been relevant is really important. But Arabos also has pay 1 and a black and 2 life to draw a card. So you've got the greed mechanic or the greed card on Arabos for 1 extra mana.
Yeah, one extra colorless though, so it's not too bad.
Correct. 1 extra colorless. So you pay 2 life and draw 3 cards. Your opponents can't gain life, and a 5/7 indestructible isn't nothing, especially when the fact that your commander comes with 3 black mana on it.
Right, so only 1 more devotion past Arabos in your commander, and it's a creature.
And it's a creature.
And this particular enchantment's indestructible, so you can consider that an upgrade over greed as well. And yeah, the opponents can't gaining life. I know you mentioned life gain strategies, but even if we look at a mirror matchup with Vilis, in this Vilis deck, we're going to see a lot of life gain strategy in here too. So even in the mirror matchup, it's going to be important.
Right.
The next card here is Phyrexian Reclamation. So this is an enchantment for 1 black that says you can pay 1 and a black and 2 life to return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So this is super nice because it's just a super cheap card. It literally only costs 1 black to get out there. And then it's going to help with a couple of the enter the battlefield creatures that are running in this deck. The big one is going to be Grey Merchant of Asphodel, like we see in every single mono black deck that's out there. The more times that you can recur that from your graveyard and put it onto the battlefield, the better. And this particular deck doesn't run too many direct reanimation spells from the graveyard to the battlefield. Actually, I think reanimation might be the only one, and that's because you have to pay life equal to the converted mana cost, so it goes well with the card draw strategy with Vilis. But so this Phyrexian Reclamation is going to be a great way to keep recurring your creatures and drawing cards on top.
Right. The next card we're going to try to emulate is Phyrexian Arena. So another black popular card that basically deals damage to you at the beginning of your upkeep, but you receive extra benefit from just having Vilis Broker of Blood out. So Phyrexian Arena is an enchantment for 1 black that says at the beginning of your upkeep, you draw a card and lose a life. Now, we're not playing Phyrexian Arena in this version that Dan has, but there are some other cards that are similar, not necessarily that you're just going to draw a single card, but in the fact that you're going to lose life at your upkeep, but it does something in addition just because of Vilis. So the first one here is Blessing of Leeches, which is an enchant creature. It's an aura for 2 and a black that says you may play Blessing of Leeches anytime you could play an instant. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life, and it has pay 0 to regenerate enchanted creature.
Whoa, pay 0?
Pay 0. So you're gonna instant speed put this on Vilis, I assume at the end of an opponent's turn, or just in response to removal. But at the beginning of your upkeep, it just says you lose 1 life and draw 1 card if Vilis is out.
Yeah, it's super, super great. This is another one of those cards I didn't know exactly. It's a common from Rivals of Kamigawa. Betrayal of Kamigawa? No, it's 25-cent card.
It's the one that looks like the shuriken.
Right.
Like the Yeah, I don't know the Kamigawa set symbols. That's one I will say I don't know those ones as well.
If you know that set, comment on this podcast or video on what symbol it's from. But no, I didn't know that existed. Paying 0 to regenerate a creature, that's absolutely nuts. That's basically indestructible at that point.
It's from Betrayers of Kamigawa.
Perfect. All right, so the next card we're going to talk about is a mono black staple even in Modern, and this is Bob, or Dark Confidant. So Dark Confidant is 1 and a black for a 2/1 human wizard that says at the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your library and put that card into your hand. You lose life equal to its converted mana cost. So what's normally seen as a downside on Bob, where you're losing life, I guess maybe in Modern it's played with it's the shadow, death shadow, and maybe you want to lose the life there too. So maybe it's actually kind of similar to the Modern strategy. But the downside of losing life equal to the converted mana cost of the card is actually going to just draw you that many cards. So maybe you want to reveal your 6 CMC Bola Citadel with your Bob. You're like, oh no, I took 6 damage. Also, I'm drawing 6 cards. But just the inherent, card of Bob, of Dark Confidant in a black deck. I mean, putting it out on turn 2 just to start getting card advantage. You have 40 life at that point. You might as well just use your life as a resource and start getting extra card advantage. So this is kind of a double whammy, really, really good card early and late game.
Absolutely. The next card here is a rock that costs nothing. So it's Manic Crypt. It's an artifact that costs 0, and it says that at the beginning of your upkeep, you flip a coin. If you lose the flip, it deals 3 damage to you, and it taps for 2 colorless. So if you lose the flip, sure, you take 3, but you draw 3. If you don't lose the flip, now you have a 0 CMC rock that taps for 2.
Yeah, maybe you want to play Kark's Thumb in here, so you purposefully lose that flip every time, and you always draw 3 cards.
Sure,
probably not.
I don't. Probably not.
Probably
but
not.
You could probably draw into it pretty quickly, so it would be probably consistent, right?
That's true. That's true. Now, another artifact that's going to do a very similar effect, but maybe more consistently, is Mana Vault. So Mana Vault is a 1 CMC mana rock that says Mana Vault doesn't untap during your untap step. At the beginning of your upkeep, you can pay 4 generic, and if you do untap Mana Vault, at the beginning of your draw step, if Mana Vault is tapped, it deals 1 damage to you, or in a Vilis deck, you draw 1 card. And then you can tap it for 3. So not only are both of these mana rocks very, cost efficient, and they produce a lot of colorless mana, which you're going to need to pump out your Vilis, being 5 colorless in his well, not 5 colors, 5 generic in his casting cost. But it's also going to, net you extra advantages when they're just on the battlefield with Vilis. So I think that's kind of interesting and really cool synergy to play this cheap and fast mana.
Absolutely. And now we've got just some other cards that work really well with Vilis, seeing that you can pay life or you receive a lot of benefit from it. So I'm actually going to talk about a card that I had mentioned earlier, which is Bola Citadel. So legendary artifact for 3 black that says you can look at the top card of your library at any time. You can play the top card of your library. So if it is a land, you can play it. And then if you cast a spell this way, you pay life equal to its converted mana cost rather than paying its mana cost. So it's a really strong card here because you can get those lands off of the top of your deck. You can play a big spell off the top of your deck and then draw a bunch of cards off of Vilis. And it also has an ability that I will not say that a lot of people forget about because maybe it's just me, but it also has tap and sacrifice 10 non-land permanents to have each opponent lose 10 life. And I do believe that I have lost to that ability on Bola Citadel to Dan before in this deck.
Yeah.
So Bola Citadel is an extremely, extremely powerful card.
Yeah, it's like even better than the Bob effect. So, but almost equivalent for all the card draw. It's super awesome.
And if you do have a land on top, there's a good chance that you have a way to lose a life and get rid of that land off the top in this deck.
I mean, you can simply pay 1 black into Vilis's ability to do that.
Correct. In a lot of other decks with Bola Citadel, you can get stuck and you go, I don't have a way to get this card off the top of my library because you had maybe you had 2 lands in a row and you don't have a way to lose life. But yeah, you're right. Vilis does have just pay 1 black mana and then you can lose a life and draw a card I guess you do give a creature -1/-1 until end of turn, which is not irrelevant.
No,
works fantastic with this card.
You do have to have, I guess one thing people might not realize, you do have to have a relevant target for his ability to give -1/-1. You can target Vilis himself with his own ability. So you can do it 7 times before Vilis himself dies. So just in case you're looking at that. And speaking of Vilis's ability, I think the only thing that can make Vilis's ability of pay 1 black and pay 2 life to do the -1/-1 would be better is if you didn't have to pay any mana into it at all. And so that brings us to our next card, which is Keurig, Son of Yawgmoth. So Keurig is a 4 Phyrexian black, 2/2 horror minion. And if you're not familiar with Phyrexian mana, that just means you can pay 2 life instead of a black mana for those mana bubbles.
Mana bubbles.
Yeah, whatever you want to say. So he has the ability that says for each black in a cost, whether it is the cost of a spell or an ability, you may pay 2 life rather than pay that mana. Whenever you cast a black spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Keurig, Son of Yawgmoth. So Keurig allowing you to pay life instead of mana is not only going to help you ramp out some of your higher converted mana cost spells, but it's also going to net you card draw on top of the fact that you now can activate Vilis's ability by paying 2 life rather than paying any black. And that's the same for the enchantment Greed or any of the other black pips that appear on some of the activated abilities that we already talked about earlier in this episode. So very, very powerful card. I actually have a Keurig, Son of Yawgmoth Shadowborn Apostle deck, and Vilis is always the first target that I go get because it will definitely draw me into all of my answers and win conditions. And I definitely think people sleep a lot on Keurig's lifelink ability. They think Keurig is just there to turn everything into Phyrexian black. But the fact that Keurig has lifelink can keep you in the game just pretty relevantly, especially since you're going to be casting so many black cards and putting more +1/+1 counters in them to offset the life loss.
It's true. I'm one of those people that thinks it's just there for the Phyrexian mana. And I only think that, I'll be honest, because every time I see a Keurig out and it's being used by me personally, it always dies.
Yeah.
No one lets it live.
It's a really strong card.
but you should let it live once. I mean, give me a shot. Just give me a chance.
Give me a chance. If you make a deal with me, absolutely I'll let it live because I love seeing Keurig go off.
Okay, so the next time I play Keurig, you just won't kill it for like 1 round.
I'm usually not the person with the removal spell in hand anyways,
to be fair. This is true. You do play some greedy decks as well. Just like this deck is pretty greedy, you do play some greedy decks. But no, Crick is there. I do think that we should suggest a name change though, based on how you explained Crick, and we should suggest Dan call this Vilis's Mana Bubbles.
Mana Bubbles. I like it.
Mana Bubbles. Mono black Mana Bubbles.
It seems a lot less intimidating that way. And people are like, oh, we're just playing with bubbles today.
We're just playing with bubbles. So a few more cards here. Actually, some lands that give us some really good synergies with Vilis. The first one here, Ancient Tomb, taps to add 2 colorless mana. And you actually will... it deals 2 damage to you at the same time. So you're going to tap for 2 and draw 2 at the same time. Really great card. I love it.
Yeah, and having a land that taps for 2 is going to help you ramp out Vilis anyways. So that's always cool. The next land we have is Boseiju, who shelters all. It does come into play tapped, but you tap it and you pay 2 life, or you draw 2 cards, and you add 1 colorless to your mana pool. If this mana is spent to cast an instant or sorcery spell, the spell can't be countered by spells or abilities. So this is not only important to just get a couple extra card draw, you can use this on a creature. It doesn't say you can't use it on a creature, it just doesn't become uncounterable. So you can always use this to draw some cards, but being able to have your big X spells like an Exsanguinate or something come down and have it uncounterable is always a plus side to win the game.
Yeah, this is one of those cards that every time I see someone play it, it's always great. Like I like seeing it. I like how it works. I don't own a Boseiju. I really wish I had. Do you play this in any deck?
I don't own one. I don't own one myself.
You don't own one either?
No.
Man.
It would be strong. We should probably, and any deck that, I have all my mono black decks that win with a giant Torment of Hailfire or Exsanguinate or something should be playing Boseiju. But at the same time, Narset's Reversal still gets around that Boseiju.
That's true. And the last land here is Tarnish Citadel, a land that I actually really like. It taps for 1 colorless mana, or you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool and lightning bolt yourself. So you deal 3 damage to you and draw 3 cards. So if you don't need the mana, I guess you can still tap it and draw 3 cards. Otherwise, you can choose any color. Now, you're in a mono black deck, so you're probably just going to tap it and add black anyway, and draw 3 cards. Otherwise, you can tap it for the colorless if Vilis isn't out.
Right. So I like that ability. You know, you're probably going to be playing Urborg in your deck too, so maybe you'll be able to tap it for a black either way, but the fact that you don't have to take damage from it every single time, I really like about that land.
Right. But, so, Coil, we are paying so much life. How are we not just going to die with this deck that Dan runs?
So there's a lot of I have 10 different cards put to the side specifically that are going to make it so that Dan doesn't die.
All right. Lay them on us.
So the first one is, I think, a very underplayed enchantment. Personally, I don't see it enough. See it more in go wide strategies than you do in go tall strategies. But I think it should be included in both. And that is Whip of Airbow. So this is a 2 black legendary enchantment artifact that says creatures you control have lifelink. That's the big thing there. It does have a secondary ability of pay 2 black and tap it to return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step. If it would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. I don't think the reanimation ability in this is as relevant as everything else. We're only playing 14 creatures total in this deck. But I guess they are kind of all really strong creatures. But, you know, a creature like Solemn Simulacrum is always going to be a nice creature to reanimate with Whip. But if you wanted to maybe combo off or something, maybe you're going to be grabbing your Keurig or a Gray Merchant or something like that. But mostly the lifelink part of this enchantment is the important part for this permanent.
Yeah, no, really great. The next card here is Shadow Spear. So this one is actually still in standard. So a legendary artifact equipment for 1 mana that says equip creature gets +1/+1, has trample and lifelink, and pay 1 permanent your opponent's control, lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, which is actually important with cards that are in this deck. It has equip for 2. So you can equip this to your commander or any of the other relevant strong creatures in this deck. I mean, there aren't really any bad creatures, right? I mean, a lot of these are doing something very strong, right? So Arabos is a 5/7. Crit can just become ginormous. Psychosis Crawler can be very large. Wall of Blood, if you really want to block, I guess you can put Shadow Spear on it and pay a bunch of life, right? Because you just get it all back. Mm-hmm. I think Shadow Spear is a fantastic card. I started running this in a lot of my commander decks, and I'm never really disappointed when I play Shadow Spear.
No, that activated ability to remove hexproof, like you said, is very important for any target removal. So it's
right,
really nice card.
Even so, it removes indestructible too, which is really, really great.
Yeah. Next one is a little bit older card, but it did get a reprint in Double Masters, and that is Basilisk Collar. So for 1 generic mana, you get an artifact equipment that says equip creature has death touch and lifelink, and you can equip for 2. So again, throw in lifelink on one of your creatures. Probably going to be Vilis just because he's already a flying 8/8, and you can get in and gain a lot of life. Not too much more to say about Basilisk Collar.
No, there's really not. The next card is Eternal Thirst, another aura. There's a lot of auras in this deck, which I do like to see. 1 and a black for enchant creature that says enchanted creature has lifelink, and whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So we're going to see a lot of creatures dying when Vilis is out. I mean, especially if let's say you're playing against a token deck, right? So you pay 1 mana and 2 life into Vilis's ability, and you could potentially just wipe out someone's go wide strategy. But there's other cards in here that are just going to take out, creatures that your opponents control, right? So I see there's Damnation. Dan is running Toxic Deluge. I think this card does a lot more than just, benefit you when a creature naturally dies. You've got some removal here and can destroy some creatures and really pump up Vilis or whatever creature you put this on.
Yeah, absolutely. The last one that we have where we're talking about gearing up Vilis is Rush of Vitality. So this is more of like a combat trick type of deal. And this is to be fair, one card that I do question in this deck list. I think there's probably improvements you can make from this particular card, but maybe Dan has seen this card be very relevant because of its combat trick nature. So this is Rush of Vitality for 1 and a black. It's an instant. It says target creature gets +1/+0 and gains lifelink and indestructible until end of turn. So obviously the indestructible is important. Maybe Dan saw a lot of instances where he was swinging in with Vilis and someone uses target removal on it and he says, oh, target removal, how about I give him indestructible and lifelink? I'm going to gain a bunch of life now too, and I'm going to make you pay. Maybe that's the mentality behind that, but I think there's probably another black aura or something that will grant lifelink that might be a better fit here. I didn't have an opportunity to talk to Dan about Rush of Vitality in particular, so I'll have that conversation with him after this episode.
So it's that we're just increasing the number of folks that are playing Rush of Vitality. I love seeing cards like this where someone casts it and you go, I've never even heard of this card. What even is this? And it looks like this is from the Kaladesh block. Maybe it was reprinted, but I think this is a really cool card.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now that Vilis is huge, right? I mean, we're assuming our plan is working in our favor. What are we going to do with this giant Vilis? Coyle, tell us about the first card that we are going to cast.
Yeah, so the first card is another enchantment aura, the ones that Andy seems to like in this deck. So for one and a black, you enchant a creature you control. It says when enchanted creature dies, target player loses X life and you gain X life, where X is its power. So this is just like, I guess, putting a fuse on Vilis. Just go, I'm going to enchant him, and then I'll whenever you're ready to destroy him and take all this damage to your face, you just let me know, So I really...
And that was what, Dying Wish?
Dying Wish, yes, 1 and a black.
All right. Yeah, no, that is... I don't think I've ever seen this card cast either, and it's from a really good set. It's from Gatecrash.
I'm surprised you haven't seen it since you like the set so much.
I know. I didn't get to play limited, so really, really cool card though. The next card is Essence Harvest. Essence Harvest is a sorcery for 2 and a black that says target player loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So we're going to get some life back here. We're not drawing necessarily, but if Vilis is at 15 power or more or whatever, even if it's just at its regular power, I'll be honest, playing a card to have someone lose 8 and you gain 8, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the last one we have here is another sorcery. This is Rite of Consumption. So for 1 and a black, if a sorcery, it says, as additional cost to play Rite of Consumption, sacrifice a creature. Rite of Consumption deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to target player, and you gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. So this is going to be a way that you can fling your giant Vilis at someone, or some other opportunities. We do play Psychosis Crawler in here, so if you do have a giant Psychosis Crawler and you feel like you want to keep your Vilis or draw a few more cards, you could technically fling your own creatures at your own face to deal damage to yourself, draw those cards, and then gain the life immediately back. So
that's the big brain plan. I did not think about that one, I'll be honest.
Maybe you could combine it with your Wall of Blood, and
ooh.
But then you have to do the math a little bit, make sure you don't kill yourself with the
math
fling.
Is for blockers, not for flingers.
You're flinging at yourself, so I better hope you're good at math.
Right. So now if we're not utilizing Vilis, right, we've got some other ways to win the game. I do see that Dan is running Urborg and Cabal Coffers. So Urborg says each land is a swamp in addition to its other types, and Cabal Coffer says pay 2 and tap it to add black to your mana pool for each swamp you control. So you can produce a lot of mana very quickly. We've got cards like Exsanguinate and Grey Merchant of Asphodel. So I'll talk about Grey Merchant. So Grey Merchant says it's a 2/4 zombie for 3 black that says when Grey Merchant of Asphodel enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life, where X is your devotion to black, and you gain life equal to the life lost this way. So if you have a lot of cards or a lot of black mana pips or bubbles, lots of mono black bubbles out. You can cast a Grey Merchant and gain a lot of life, and then perhaps use that to cast more of the cards that you just drew from causing yourself to lose life in some way other than Grey Merchant.
Yes. And you have Exsanguinate, which is a sorcery for X black that says each opponent loses X life and you gain life equal to the life lost this way. A card that is, again, particularly good in Commander because you have more than one opponent, so you're going to be gaining a lot of life. So yeah, those are just, some regular old mono black win conditions that you're going to throw in this deck just in case you can't get there with your specific Vilis win conditions.
Right. So now that we've drawn a lot of our deck, like let's say our plan is still going according to plan, right? Because every time I played against Vilis, the plan is never interrupted. It just keeps going.
Yeah.
We've drawn, let's say we've drawn the majority of our deck. What are we going to do to win, Coil?
So Dan's favorite win condition, according to his primer, and I think it's the same because I'm pretty sure I've lost to the same condition
I
more
have
than
lost
once.
to this as well.
So his favorite win condition is Veto Thorn of the Dusk Rose. So that's 2 and a black for a 1/3 vampire cleric. It says whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life, and then you can pay 3 black, and creatures you control gain lifelink until end of turn. So this is the same effect as Sanguine Bond, which is a 5 converted mana cost enchantment that does the same effect whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. These 2 effects do technically go infinite with Exquisite Blood, which is in the deck. So Exquisite Blood says whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. So you just have to trigger either an opponent losing life or you gaining life. It goes infinite back and forth between the 2 enchantments, and you win that way. Dan doesn't usually like to win with the infinite combos, but he does like to gain 40 life and then ping you for 40 with the Vilis. So
whenever I play against Dan always says, I want to draw all the cards. Should I be greedy? And both Coil and I in unison are always like, yes.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. Draw all the cards. It's my favorite thing. And speaking of drawing cards, the next win con here is Psychosis Crawler. So it's a star for its power and toughness artifact horror that says, Psychosis Crawler's power and toughness are equal to the number of cards in your hand. So it costs 5 mana, and it says whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. So you're going to cause yourself to lose life to draw cards, which is going to cause them to lose life. Yeah. Really great. Really great stuff here.
Keep everyone on the same playing field.
And the amount of cards that you draw on this deck is bananas. So I would expect that, if you see a Psychosis Crawler resolve, you might not have another turn. And I think I was that naive and innocent opponent that one time Dan played Psychosis Crawler, and I said, I think I can remove it on my next turn. And I think I remember him saying, you think you're going to get another turn. So really, really great card, and affordable. I think this card's under 50 cents. So yeah. I really like Psychosis Crawler.
Yeah, and if drawing cards to kill everyone with Psychosis Crawler doesn't quite get Dan there, he actually has 3 different abilities to discard cards from his enormous hand of cards that he's been drawing in order to do extra effects. So he has a Scourge Familiar, which is a creature that allows you to discard cards to add black mana to your mana pool. It's Crown of Darkness, which is an aura with flash. That says you discard a card, target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And then Sickening Dreams, which is a 1 and a black sorcery that says as an additional cost to play Sickening Dreams, discard X cards from your hand, and Sickening Dreams deals X damage to each creature and each player. That particular card, Sickening Dreams, is kind of cool because you could discard 10 cards, deals 10 damage to each player, and then you get to draw those 10 cards right back because you control your Vilis.
Yeah, that card is fantastic.
And
then next...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I was going to say next we have Hatred, which is an instant speed spell for 3 black that says pay X life, target creature gets +X/+O until end of turn. So if you want to get in for that commander damage with Vilis, you can just pay a lot of life to give Vilis +X/+O, and you draw all those cards.
Yeah, 13 life to make Vilis a 21 power commander flying at instant speed at your opponent to get him with the commander damage.
So pay 5 to draw 13 and take someone out with commander damage.
Yeah,
sign me up.
This is a reserve list card that is spiking in price, so do be careful about the price of Hatred.
I don't have a copy of this. I'm so sad I don't have a copy of Hatred.
Yeah, it's a really fun card. A lot of people were using it in like a Skittles deck or something to get there with Infect, or
sure.
I really like using it in Keurig because Keurig has lifelink, so you get all the life back that you pay into it anyways. So very, very underrated card, but maybe people aren't playing it because it's expensive and it's a reserve list card.
It looks like it's at $30 for a damaged copy. And for just a regular version, it looks like the price right now is around $52. So if you have one and you want to play Vilis, fantastic addition.
Yeah. Now, the last two sections we're going to talk about here, probably spend less time here because it's kind of just more standard stuff. We're going to talk about a little bit of the mana base and then the control side of the deck. So I know, Andy, you already mentioned the Urborg and Cabal coffers in the lands portion. When looking at Dan's deck list, he doesn't seem to run too many utility lands. He runs actually 24 basics, snow-covered basics specifically. So I think that his Cabal coffers doesn't necessarily depend on Urborg as much as my Cabal coffers would in my mono black decks, and even to the point where he might want to think about running Cabal Stronghold in this deck to get even more mana.
I run Cabal Stronghold in my Veto deck. I really like it, and I don't know how many swamp you want to have specifically to make Cabal Stronghold relevant, but I do like that card, and it can at least tap for mana when you don't need to activate its ability.
Right.
Sure.
He's going to run Crypt Ghast, which is going to double his swamps, but has the added effect of being able to extort things to get some more life back in case he's running low on life, which is awesome. Jet Medallion is probably my number one quote-unquote mana rock. It's not a rock, but it makes all your black spells cost one less. Extra Planar Lens in combination with a snow-covered swamp, so that hopefully he will be the only one getting double mana from the Extra Planar Lens. This is one particular deck that Jeweled Lotus works really well in because Vilis does have not only 3 black pips in his mana cost, but he also just costs 8. So Jeweled Lotus is going to be great to get you there.
Right. And then finishing out and rounding out the deck here, we've got some removal and some control. So we have a copy of Darkness, which is a mono black fog. It is one black for an instant speed spell that says prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. So, if you've paid too much life and you're going to get knocked out, this could keep you alive for another turn unexpectedly.
Yeah. Next card is Imps Mischief, which is actually from Planar Chaos or the time spiral block. So maybe we'll see an Imps Mischief reprint coming up here soon. This is an instant speed for 1 and a black. It says change the target of target spell with a single target. You lose life equal to the spell's converted mana cost. So not only are you getting kind of like a pseudo deflecting swat in mono black to change the target of a spell, but you're also losing life equal to its converted mana cost. So you might even be able to get to draw some cards with Vilis with this.
Right. And I didn't spoil the next card here in my intro, but I'll spoil it now. It's sudden spoiling. Split second instant speed for 1 black that says until end of turn, creatures target player controls lose abilities and have base power and toughness 0-2. This is just a really great utility card to maybe shut somebody down for a turn that has stuff that's happening that is going to really negatively impact you.
That's right. And then we also have Vraska's Contempt as an exile removal spell. So this is for 2 black, instant speed, exile target creature or planeswalker, and you gain 2 life. So I actually talked to Dan about this card in particular because I wasn't really sure why he was running this card over a card like Deadly Rollick, which is a 4 converted mana cost instant that says if you control your commander, you don't have to pay the mana cost of the card. You can just cast it for free, and it exiles a target creature. So the only upside of Vraska's Contempt would be gaining the 2 life. And after talking to Dan, he said sometimes the 2 life can be really relevant.
Sure.
But at the same time, I think the upside of Deadly Rollick is better than the upside of Vraska's Contempt. And while I was having this conversation with Dan, he actually switched out the cards. So it is now a Deadly Rollick.
So now his deck is even stronger. Wow.
Yes, that's right. You're welcome.
Great. And then finally, we have 3 board wipes, essentially. We've got Damnation, Dead of Winter, and Toxic Deluge. So Damnation, sorcery, 2 black says destroy all creatures, they can't be regenerated. Dead of Winter takes advantage of those snow-covered swamps. So it says all non-snow creatures get -X until end of turn, where X is the number of snow permanents you control. It's a sorcery for 2 and a black. And then Toxic Deluge is a sorcery for 2 and a black that says as an additional cost to cast the spell, pay X life, which again, relevant with Vilis, but it says all creatures get -X until end of turn. Vilis is an 8/8, so you're probably not going to impact your Vilis with those last 2 cards, but these are 3 solid board wipes, and I am sad every time I lose my entire board to these.
Yeah, but they're so good.
They're so good.
So that's the end of Dan's list, but I did have 2 more cards that I kind of wanted to talk to Dan about eventually, and maybe see if he can fit them in the deck. Maybe he does. He has a fit for the deck, doesn't have a fit for the deck, and that is the first one is Command the Dread Horde. So this is a 6 converted mana cost sorcery. So for 4 black, it says you can return any number of creatures or planeswalker cards from graveyards to the battlefield under your control, and then you lose life equal to the total converted mana cost of all of those cards. So with Command the Dread Horde, I know Dan is only playing 14 creatures, and maybe that's why he is choosing not to play this particular card. But you can grab cards from your opponent's graveyards too with this one. And as long as Gray Merchant is either in your graveyard or one of your opponent's graveyards, I think this is going to be a free card draw spell for Vilis, and you're going to be able to get a really big board. But, it is 6 converted mana cost. It's a little bit higher. But again, we talked about how this deck will ramp out really well and should be able to play this. And the other card that I wanted to talk about was Liliana's Contract. And Liliana's Contract is a 3 black enchantment. It says when Liliana's Contract enters the battlefield, you draw 4 cards and you lose 4 life. And has the added effect of at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 4 or more demons with different names, you win the game. With Vilis out on the battlefield, it becomes draw 8 cards, which I think is really, really great for 5 mana. Now, Dan is only playing 3 demons in his deck, so he'll never actually be able to get the win condition for Liliana's Contract. But I think if he played a Runescarred Demon, which is an enter the battlefield demonic tutor, he'll have the 4 demons, will be able to fill out that last effect if it does. But really, maybe it's an extra target for your opponent's removal if they think you're going to try to win that way, and it's going to draw you 8 cards for 5 mana.
Right. No, that seems like a really fun card, and I like seeing Liliana's Contract go off as the win con. So Dan, thank you so much for your continued support and for being a patron. Everybody, we want to thank you all for listening this week. If you want to contact us, you can find our podcast online at theguardianprojectpodcast.com. You can find our social media on Twitter at GuardianPod and our gameplay videos on YouTube at youtube.com/theguardianproject. Or you can email us at guardianprojectpod@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter at ATFlory.
And I'm on Twitter at WormCoilEngine. And of course, we want to give a special thanks to our producer, Ryan Nichols, and our producer and editor, Ryan Nichols, and also Chris Wolf, who handles all of our graphic design and our thumbnails that look beautiful every single week up on our YouTube channel. Thanks again to the both of you. We appreciate all of your work that you do with us.
And everybody, we will be back next week with episode 91. I can't believe we're already in the 90s.
Ryan, we're in the 90s.
We're in the 90s. Okay, Ryan was saying that it felt like we were in the 80s for forever, but it was only 10 episodes.
That's right, but Ryan and I are 90s kids, so we're going to enjoy it while we're here.
Have a great week, everyone.
Bye-bye.